Yeah, well, I forgot.
All right, so when we think about entities, we got to think that entities want to deceive people into siding with them about something that is not the right narrative, right? Okay. So I don't want to disappoint you in what I'm about to tell you. I want you to be well informed that there is a great deception going on. What I feel is going to happen is they're going to
Hey,
pull the
Diane, good to
carpet out
see
from
you.
under us and tell us a whole bunch of stuff at one time and then say that these are
Di, I'm not sure on this guy. I think he may have been a 7 Day Adventist. I'm not sure. If he is, I'll get rid of it.
our gods.
Hey, yeah, bye. Good to see you.
All right, welcome to Coffee Talk. All right, so it's going to get intense as it usually does, and I want you to approach everything with an open mind, so that you can make your own decisions, not based on things that you've been told before, but to be more open to data. Um, so the first thing I want to tell you is that it's an amazing thing that you came this morning, because most people are on a more of a one track as far as approaching new things or things that you don't understand. And one of the things I've noticed about myself is that if I'm not afraid to ask questions and not afraid to learn, that it kind of extinguishes that inherent fear of the unknown. So, in other words, your pursuit of asking questions and trying to figure out what is really going on in certain areas, you find that it kind of dispels fear, the fear, because there's fear of the unknown. Everybody understand that, right? So there's a lot of things you don't know, and you're even some underlying fear is that you were brought up in religious circles where your God has a 2x4 on the throne and he's waiting to swat you. And so all of us have been indoctrinated that way. So that it's kind of like your life is discovery as well. But if you are just entrenched in the religion like the Pharisees were, they were not open to anything new, even if it was the truth. So they were resistant to it, right? And in their case, it was because that was their bread and butter. It was a cartel, it was a system, a moneymaker, and power. It become part of a government, right? You understand all that? Is it too early? Take another sip of coffee. Okay, so if you ask questions, then you have to be willing to say, okay, the answers may be not correct or half right, so there might be this information disseminated to you that it's false information. So a lot of the agencies do that. They've told my friends certain things that were correct, but then there were things where they said this was the test information, which means it's earmarked. So if it gets out into the public, they know exactly who's talked about it. So there are situations with all these people that talk,
Wow.
that not everything they're saying is correct, even though in their mind it could be correct to them, or they could be disinformation officers themselves. So, in the case of some intelligence agencies, you never really retire.
Diane, Trump's got to be one of the 10 kings, surely. He's set up as a 10 king.
Even though you think you're retired, you're always being watched, you're always accountable. You cannot mention anything that's classified. But you have people that pull you aside, and over the years, I have been shocked. I have been shocked most of my life, because I know these people and I know they're not lying. but then I got to find out, okay, what they were told, what they were shown, what was a really, disinformation. So can I say this? All these people I have up here, you got to understand that not every one of these people are disinformation officers. In other words, they're not just placed as a whistleblower or whatever. They're not just there to give information out to the public. They're there to guide you, navigate you where those intelligence agencies want you to go, which would not be the correct destination that you're actually seeking. Does everybody understand it? Do I need to say it all again? I hope not. Okay, so I tell you this because in the church, if you study the Bible, I've studied the Bible for 44 years, most of it's in school. I have read all the languages, learned the different Greek and Hebrew and Aramaic, and all the time I'm doing word studies. But in the school, I don't go that deep into it because all of you just need application for your life. And if I give you kind of the nuance of what is being said, based on 100 different translations, I feel like I offer you some different translations, and it shows you can do the same thing. So you don't have to just come to me. But most of the time, school, like our school is set
6.3. That's starting to get heavy.
up so that it helps you to do it, whereas you might not be able to just be that disciplined on your own. So we make it easy so that you can do what you need to do for your life. But I don't think that studying words all the time and the Greek and the Hebrew and I call it the home, where people just make up stuff and they're based on their own, bad coffee that morning. I feel like if I can get you to just frame your mind like and approach the Christian religion, which is not the same as being a believer. The Christian name was given afterwards. It's not really in the Bible. Jesus referred to the believing one.
I hate that they use that. Christianity is used in Acts. So they don't say Christian, but they do say Christianity. I hate when they do that.
And then John, he said, listen, those who embraced him and his teachings, he gave them the power to become sons of God. And in John 1:12. So that's the way I believe. That a believer would die for Jesus Christ. A believer represents Jesus Christ. A Christian has become kind of like a label. So that's the way that things are in the world too. You're labeled. Oh, you're one of those people. Okay, so in the Gospels, Jesus never took an offering, but yet he was supplied abundantly. He had to have been, because he had 12 guys that loved brisket, or whatever. I mean, they ate. They had to have, like all the sustenance. Plus, all of those men had jobs that they left. They were professionals, most of them. So they had families that they left for 3.5 years when they went on the road with Jesus. You got to remember that Peter went back to fishing. That means he still had his nets, his boat. That means somebody else was running the business. Okay, so you got to think that way, that God supernaturally supplied the ministry of Jesus, and there's women mentioned, that supported him, and then Paul supported Paul, and these ladies are mentioned. There are ladies that are mentioned as apostles. There are ladies that are mentioned as prophets. So I don't understand a lot of things that are going on today. I understand that the Corinthian church, if you look at that culture, I understand what Paul was trying to say there, but he wasn't saying that as far as women in ministry. He was talking about the culture there, and it was pretty wild. So I say all this because observation and gathering data is supposed to be neutral, unbiased, okay? But that's not even really happening these days, right? People are slanted one way or the other, and we've seen what's happening now in our government because of that. Okay, so if you would legitimately look at things, okay, so like So, I'm in my headquarters building and I feel something brush by me. And I'm looking around. And so then I go to my camera in that room, and there was an orb on the camera that wasn't visible to my eyes. And so this has happened numerous times. We've gotten rid of all of them because we had to observe and experiment and try different things to see if they are friend or foe. How do they react? So what we would do is, Kathy, I'd say, listen, this room, we're going to go up there. We're not going to turn on any lights, but look at this. And I would show her my phone, right? This phone right here. And I would say, listen, look at all these things in the green room at our headquarters upstairs. And so Kathy, I said, grab my hand. I'm in my office downstairs. I grab her hand. I said, let's start praying in the Spirit. When we did, these things started to get very active and agitated and bouncing off each other. And I've seen up to 1,000 of these things in some of the rooms when we first moved in there. 1,000 circulating around like a weather pattern. That's why I'm speaking for 2,300 miles away. And the Lord said, just look on your camera right now as I was praying to get ready to come down and speak. And these things had infiltrated one of our studios just to mess with me. And so I started rebuking them and commanding them to leave in Jesus' name. And they just started leaving, taking off hundreds at a time until there was none. And now there's absolutely nothing happening in the studio. But it took.
I wonder what's going on with India. They've taken center stage the last week, haven't they? And they're part of BRICS. So I wonder what they're doing.
Okay. Like for Kathy and I, when we move into a place, it usually takes a year or two. And that's putting our foot down and anointing and praying. But there are sometimes, like the only time we didn't have the problem is when we went in the middle of the desert and picked out a plot of land and built a house there. We had no demonic entities in that house because it was owned by us. There was Bibles in the foundation. There was my book in the foundation. There was all kinds of things that we gave that land to the Lord, and we built it. No one else lived there, so there's no invisible friends.
Get half price off the Woodsman Body Wash range now at Coles.
Your trusty road trip mobile. Now cue the insurance it deserves.
There is only one Australian flag that represents all Australians. We don't need to be welcome to our...
This autumn, bring any National Home Solar offer of any size package to Arise Solar on a Electrolite system and Arise Solar.
Right. Okay, so I said, let's hold hands, Kathy. And these things started going bonkers as we're praying in the Spirit. So this is what's so funny is that we started to say, like, if we were talking about Jesus Christ and the blood of Jesus, they shouldn't have responded the way that they did about it. They would all just stop and pay homage to Jesus Christ, of course, but they were scared. So we went up there, not turning the lights on. They were still in the room, and we just started commanding them to go in Jesus' name. And they started ricocheting off each other, and even one went through me. Because I saw it on here, but I felt it. And I always wonder, like, what is that feeling times when I pray and I'm doing warfare? All of a sudden I'll feel something go like right through me or bounce off me. So you can understand, I'm just observing. I'm not kind of looking.
When I say Pakis, the Pakistan had the bomb. I know India's got the bomb. I'm pretty sure Pakistan has as well.
To prove anything, I'm observing. I'm gathering data, but I start to test the spirits. Jesus is Lord, and see what happens, right? And when I see that they get nervous, I'm like, well, why are they nervous if they're of God? They would stop and they would pay reverence. You know, angels will stop. Angels will actually bow and fall to the floor and start worshiping God. If you start mentioning Jesus' name, they will immediately hit the deck. And it's probably a good lesson we could learn. But observation starts to gather data, right? So you talk to people, thousands of people over the years, interviews and the many books. It was 110 books I had reviewed. All the documentation I had, when I found it, I had no more questions left, so I destroyed everything because we had all kinds of wild stuff happening. So Kathy helped me get rid of everything, but all that data was one-of-a-kind documents and things. So it revived when people started to talk in front of Congress and they were telling the same things. And I go, oh my gosh, you know, and some of these people, they didn't go as far as what I was told. So then when they'd be questioned about those things, I would watch their expressions and they would say, well, I can't talk about that. And I watch in the interviews, people's reaction, these high level officials, when they're asked certain things and they get nervous, their eyes change, their eyes switch. And they're thinking, how can I say this? And I'm thinking, well, why don't you just tell us what I already know? And they won't do it. And so I would say that a lot of times in interviews, they're telling a lot that would shock you, but it's not really going far enough based on other people who are high ranking, who have talked. So I've carried this around for a long time. A lot of stuff that happens, I don't talk about because I don't know how far people can really go with it. But the supernatural, if you're going to walk in a supernatural, there's going to be both sides of it. And you have to accept that angels are going to come and visit and help you, but then witches are going to come and visit and not help you. There's going to, you know, when we were working on the ranch a couple of weeks ago, we went and did some filming and took communion and things like that. And then we were on the way. I don't know if it was
Took communion. That doesn't sound like a Seventh-day Adventist.
To the property or to a restaurant.
Hello, you.
But this lady just pulled right out in front of us, and she it said support the witches of Texas. And she had a broom the whole way across her back bumper, and then she had a witch's hat on top of her car, and she had all of this new age stuff in there, and she was a witch, and she was just like, support witches of Texas, you know. And I'm like, I mean, how blatant can you be, you know? And so, you know, when you start talking to people and you realize their rank and they're vetted, and over the years, I've had really amazing connections that I don't know how it happened, except maybe that I felt like maybe God was trying to help me to understand some of the things that I had found in the Bible, but I just couldn't really connect the dots today, because the Bible isn't really technical, you know, scientific. It is, but it's not. So, for instance, people say, well, you know, the earth is flat because it has the four corners of the earth. But see, the thing of it is how do you explain that the earth?
See the four corners of the earth. Picture a round ball, south, north, east, and west. They're the four pillars. Up, down, left, and right. They're the four pillars of the earth.
Earth is round if you've never been above it. So it's the compass directions. And then when you talk about four corners, those are four directions, you know, and just so you know, I fly all the time. My friends fly the whole way around the world. I have people that worked for the CIA that flew the SR-71, flew the whole way around the world, and it didn't flip like a pizza with one side with pepperoni and the other side with just cheese. I mean, it's a round globe. There are people that are partners that have flown from Dallas-Fort Worth to Dallas-Fort Worth. And you got to understand, like, the earth is literally falling out from under me. I'm watching as I'm flying here. I watched it. The earth is curved, and I'm watching that the nose is always correcting down. It doesn't correct up. It's correcting down. It's going up 20 feet. It's going down, but it doesn't go down 20 feet. It's because the earth is falling out from under me as I'm going, and the plane is having to trim. It's the first time I've ever said this, because I know I'm going to get a whole bunch of mail. That's why I just erased my address, you know. But the thing that is that we can't really take the Bible and make it like a scientific document unless you are a scientist who's gathering information, can understand from Scripture certain things that are inferred, which most of us aren't that good at it. But we will.
Okay, there's a lot of science in the Old Testament. Just an example where it says fresh water, running water. That's scientific. There's a lot of things in the Old Testament that are scientific. He's a little bit wrong here.
If we're observing, like I watch ships leave and I watch them disappear over the horizon. You know, I mean, you could do that today. I mean, not here in Kansas, but I mean, the bottom line is that you can only see so far until you get another 50 miles. The Earth is really big, and the curve is very shallow in comparison. So I know that I split the room right down the middle, but I mean, UFOs are going to split it down the middle anyway. Okay, so the thing that is that the Bible has things in it that can prove that God created the earth and that there's certain things that, but the only thing that is scary to me is that we in the church really don't even understand the spirit realm. So what has happened is science is observation, and scientists, which are all these people, they have observed and gathered data, and they are further ahead than the church about the understanding of the different dimensions. But it's classified because these vehicles can perform above and beyond the laws of physics that we know. There are more that we don't know, and they will remain classified. So there are propulsion systems. There are things that can manipulate gravity.
Diane, it depends on them how I answer. If they try and be a smart ass, that's a bad move because I always make a fool of them. But it's some genuine people, and I do like what I do. And I do mostly troll, but the ones who are genuine, I give them good info.
And there are, just like there are different spectrums of light that your eye doesn't pick up, but they can be picked up by sensors. So there's a lot of things.
Oh, you were being sarcastic because I was correcting him.
that there's chasms created by satanic activity. There's chasms that you can't cross over. There's gaps, and because of that, you think, okay, the devil.
That's like Lazarus and the rich man. The gulch between them, and he wants to drink Lazarus' fingertips.
Looks like this, and demons are this. And when you really look into it, the narrative is wrong, absolutely wrong. And the reason I know that is because at the highest level, the government officials will say that these are interdimensional, and their craft become interdimensional based on laws of physics that are not known to the public.
Bev, you're sitting on a monster. Big, isn't it?
Awaken your super.
Oh, the Shiny Award. Woo! You have power. Use it to choose Power Shop.
This $39 headlamp is taking the world by storm. Don't buy another flashlight until you've seen what this new headlamp can do. This Army engineer.
Now, I've seen these things demonstrated. I have photos. I have all kinds of data. But I also know people that worked on these things, that found them, that are reverse engineering. And when I watch what they say, which they wouldn't say in public, and I've watched the repercussions of them talking to me and being thrown in jail, and some of them disappearing. I can't find even a birth certificate or a death certificate. They're gone. But they were my friend, and I worked with them. Okay, so you can understand that I put all this in my data bank, and then as a observer, I start to gather information so that I can start to draw some sort of conclusion, or at least make some dots, right? But at a PhD level, you're not allowed to interject your own opinion into anything, and unless because you take an oath, you have to say, this is just my my observation. So this whole thing is based on just observation, and it's for entertainment purposes, so to speak. Because I am just presenting to you things that were told to me, but I can't tell you their names. I can't tell you exactly everything because I won't be allowed to do this anymore at all. Unless I start my own government, my own currency.
And look what they're already doing to YouTube. There's no free speech on YouTube at all.
Warrior bucks. You see what I'm saying? Is at a certain point, those powers that be, which are satanic, will close you in based on all your medical records, all your IRS records, everything about you. They still have control until the new sheriff in town takes care of it, right? Okay, so I wanted to preface this, and I'll do this from now on, is that people are upset at times because I seem vague. It's on purpose. I have to just stir your thinking to have you not just push something aside that you see happening or that you've had happen to you. The bottom line is that most of what I have talked to people that they have seen or felt, things have happened, it is valid.
Wow.
But intelligence agencies will do.
Diane, you're under judgment. Your country's under judgment, more so than any other country, I think. You're just copping natural disasters, man-made disasters. You're just copping it everywhere.
Things to make you feel bad. When we report it to the FAA, they make you feel bad. They ask you if you want it to be reported, and then all kinds of things happen. But then the information, when you try to track your report, it goes outside of the FAA. It disappears. It's probably with the JFK files or something. But when you investigate people that have had trouble like JFK, you also realize that they were dabbling into information about UFOs, and that everyone who has promised to talk about it when they get in, they cannot fulfill that promise that they had on the campaign trail. Do you realize that? That they're read in and then they cannot talk about it. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you're read in, go into a SCIF, they called it, a secure area. They tell you everything, but then you have to sign. And you can never talk about it. It says in the fine print that you are to lie about it, because you are privileged to be briefed. And so there was only one person, maybe a couple of congressmen and women, that said, I'm not going into that SCIF because then I won't be able to talk. There was only one person I heard say that, and he has not done it, but the others went in, and now they say, well, I can't talk about it. But Nancy Mace was one of those people that went in, but she said, I wish I never went in. I'm like, you should have just called somebody. I would have told you, but she wanted to know. And she felt like she was doing the right thing for the American people. But she said, what disheartened me was that what I was told and shown, I had already seen it on rogue videos on YouTube, but now I can't talk about it. She said, I could have learned the same thing by watching YouTube.
Wow.
But she did say this in this interview after she came out a couple weeks ago. She said that there were two shapes of objects that are unknown to the governments. They are not from any government, and we cannot stop them. But she wouldn't give the shapes. But then that means that all the other shapes she said, are ours. And they came from...
Like the triangle UFO, they reckon that's an American UFO.
The data and the reverse engineering of fallen craft. Okay, so I say all this because in order for you to really effectively understand where you sit in this generation and understand what's really going on, is that we have been taught certain things in the church about spiritual warfare and what the Bible says. But if you really read all the scriptures like I do, I take all the scriptures on demonic activity and angelic activity.
Wait a minute.
I look
Wait a minute.
into everything where Satan is mentioned. I've done that. I have made a sort of like a timeline.
Hey, Phil,
I've
good to
done all
see you,
that, but I
bro.
don't teach on it. So what I've uncovered based on all kinds of different documents and history, and this is over 40 some years. My conclusion is the conclusion that these whistleblowers have said is that these are very cunning, deceiving beings that have been here a long time. They're not from another planet, and they are playing with us. And they are masters at deception. That is a direct quote from somebody that is on a picture up here. Okay, so that's a Pentagon official. And he just recently, a couple of weeks ago in an interview, said, you have to play a chess game where you make it look like you are doing a prescribed chess move where you have chosen a certain route to win the chess game, which there are multiple ways, and you memorize all those moves. He said you have to play as though you've chosen one of those approaches, but the whole time you're doing something else and you don't talk about it. He said that's the only way you can deceive these beings, because they have intuition, because they observe us. They're watching us all the time. So this is what God had told me. Stop being predictable. Let the Spirit of God lead you and guide you where you take right angle turns. And it seems like you're going in a different direction. But I understood this in my early years of being a Christian, that I was being observed by entities who were trying to deceive me and get me into some sort of curse generationally to fall in line with the curse that was on my family. And I saw things. So when I saw things and trends in my grandfather and my father, and so I started asking questions. Pointed questions when I became a Christian. And then I realized, okay, this is what is aiming at my family. Okay, so if you really honestly, just by observation, look at the scripture, and really, you have to do this only because we are wrongly interpreting things. It's not that the scripture's wrong. It's just you got to remember that Moses wrote Genesis on the mountain of God through dictation. Moses wrote Genesis, but he didn't live through that book. It was given verbatim by angels, it says. Because he received the law, he received all of that. You got to remember that that's a supernatural book, but that is all.
It is a supernatural book, 66 authors, which normally would make, you'd ask 66 authors to write a story on something, and there's 66 different angles. But with the Holy Spirit, the way he's doing it, he's got 66 books that all have the same cadence and flavor. They got the same rhythm. So it's obviously the same writer.
Through dictation, there was no record written. So when you read certain scripture, it was dictated to Moses. Does everybody understand it? Because if not, you need to get up now, go home and study this to find out that I'm telling you the truth. Is that this Genesis is a supernatural book that's literally I can't even in English tell you what it is, but it is literally a code. It's actually encoded prophetically.
Yeah, so
it literally is a timeline of everything that's ever been in existence as well. It's written in code and it's dimensional. The book is not just length and width. It's dimensional. It's way deeper. And I could get into that if maybe I will get into that, but it's completely coded. And when you read, you've heard this about what that Yahweh is encoded. Every seventh letter, every 49th letter. You can go through the whole Pentateuch, the 5 books. You take every 7th letter. You take every 49th, the 50th letter spells Yahweh the whole way through. So how do you do that? Because it was given on a mountain by angels to Moses. So encryption, all these different things that our intelligence agencies do, it has to do with something above and beyond them and us. It has to do with these spirits and Satan himself. Paul said that he is the God of this world, that Satan is the God of this world, small g. He's a prince of the power of the air, and he said that everyone before they came to Christ had no power to resist him. You got to remember that. He said, you were one of them. You did his bidding. You had no resistance until you came to Christ. Okay, so when you come to Christ, it's inferred that then you can withstand those powers that were pulling and pushing you and causing you to be who you are, but really isn't you. And you feel addicted, you feel controlled, manipulated. You find people that are that way, like you're trying to stay away from people like that, and you end up running into them. And some of you end up marrying them, where they're narcissists, which Satan is a narcissist. Okay, so you look at, we have like Jezebel. Like Jezebel is not a spirit. Jezebel is actually a person in the Bible mentioned a couple different times. What we're portraying Jezebel as is a certain type of attribute. But men can be.
She's married to Ahab, eh?
Jezebel. Okay, so if you honestly look through the Bible and you get the name of spirits or the type of spirits, there's only a couple of them. There's a spirit of fear, right? There's a spirit of Python because it mentions a spirit of Python in the book of Acts, right? Okay, so you can legitimately say, okay, there's a spirit of fear, but we know and we understand that there are certain aspects of certain spirits and they have names. We understand it, but are they giving you disinformation because they're liars? So what can you really believe about them? Because what they'll do is, like spirits have said, I know your mother's name. I go, well, I know my mother's name. But they do that, witches do that, in order to gain your confidence. But then they feed you a bunch of things. So that's how these entities work. I've seen this happen. I've had flight attendants where they would go to a witch. They would go, and I would say, don't do that. They said, well, I've observed this. They said, well, you have a sister. Her name's this. And she goes, yeah. She goes, she was killed in a car wreck on this date. And it was true. Why? Because that witch, that spirit in that witch knows the demon that killed her. But this is what she says. You're going to have the same car accident a year from now. And I told her, I says, we're canceling that. But I know people that has happened to them. I know intercessors that were tearing down these spirits of the air, not the ones on the ground, but they were on them by themselves, it being intercessors, and they're my friends, and they were killed in car accidents. And I learned after losing people, had intercessors where I thought, we have to do this as a group, as a congregation, and we have to really be led by the Spirit, because what happens,
that's pretty stunning if that's true, and he's got no reason to lie,
is things start appearing and things start happening, and you realize you've been targeted, but it looks like an intelligence agency is after you. But what we're looking at is entities that are interdimensional, because we see angels come in and out of realms. We see demons manifest, and then I've seen witches just walk and disappear. I watch people disappear. I watch people on the airplane as I'm talking to them turn into snakes and snake eyes. And I was talking to a demon. I watched one woman, I don't mind, I get criticized for all this stuff, but that's exciting to me. But when I was, I have a buddy, he's a truck driver now, but he was in college with me at the Assemblies of God College. And when we first went there, we went to the main church for this denomination. The headquarters was in Springfield, Missouri. It was Assemblies of God. And so I went there to college, and we were brand new, and I was a brand new Christian. And so we went to the biggest church. It was a membership of 3,300. It was all the head honchos for this, the assemblies were there. And it was just this really big, nice church. And we came in on Sunday night and sat, I would say, a little bit forward of halfway, which is a big church. So we wanted to bail if it was freaking us out. So we sat on the end so we could leave early if we had to, because church can be dangerous, So I always like leave a way out for every service, for every kind of situation. I don't take certain
That's interesting that he does that.
things. I say, no, I'm not speaking there, or I'm not doing this. I am very careful not to be implicated in something that is bizarre. And, but I can talk about UFOs, and that's no problem. But anyway, so there was a guest speaker that night. It was a woman preacher. Like, wow, okay. So she gets up there and she starts talking. And what had happened was, just to give you the background of this, she was like us. She liked to minister on the street. She loved people, imagine that, and she was a guest speaker. So she made the chauffeur stop and pick up a street person and bring them to church, which you don't do,
That's pretty cool.
But she was a guest speaker, and she's really cool. So I guess this guy that walked by me like a zombie in the middle of the service was that guy, but I didn't know it. But he was completely chocked with devils. And he had become very rigid and walked like a robot, and he was swearing as he walked by, and he was saying all kinds of wild stuff. And he got to the front, in front of the pulpit, and he just went like this, turned to his side, and laid back and levitated.
What?
And I'm like, I picked a bad day to stop sniffing glue. I thought I just gave up an Air Force Academy, slot, and I left everything, and this is a circus. Now, that was enough for anybody, really. Now, you got to remember that this was a Sunday night, so it wasn't the attendance of 3,300. It was less than half of that. But I thought, in my mind, being born again, new Christian, devil fighter, that the ushers are going to come and cast the devil out like Lester Summerall would, and just demolish this thing. And it was prophesying. It says that the demons were talking, different voices were talking, saying that they had been sent here to destroy America. And it was prophesying destruction of America, like some of the ministers, your favorite ministers, are doing right now. So you can understand why I am the way I am, because I'm not going to pick up the rhetoric of the devil. So they also said that we have been sent to this church particularly to expose hypocrisy. And I said, well, you got that one right. So the pastor was there and nobody did anything. So I told my friend, who's probably watching after all these years, I said, I'm going up there and I'm going to take out this uncircumcised Philistine, is what I said. So I didn't have 5 rocks, but I had 5 scriptures. So I went up there and I started rebuking him. I mean, I have been 6 months in the Lord, but I'm really upset, kind of like our president right now. Upset at watching the ineffectiveness of a system. As I rebuked the demons, he lost power and fell to the ground. He was arched. So his head was almost touching the ground, but it wasn't, but his heels were touching the ground. And he did this St. Louis arch, you know. And he fell. And I said, come out. And they were like mouthing off. And I said, come out. And so the ushers grabbed me. They didn't grab the guy. They grabbed me and they said, leave him alone. And the pastor said he doesn't need deliverance. He just needs groceries. So they gave him a bag of groceries and they sent him away.
When Sophie first came to us, she had really bad kennel coat, had a really sensitive stomach, and was a bit overweight. Her coat is now shiny, her stool's healthy, and she's at an optimal weight. ProPlan Performance has worked wonders for Sophie.
Cafe quality coffee is one touch away with a DeLonghi automatic machine. Simply touch.
I've heard of George Santos guy. I just
And
check that
enjoy.
out. Back in the stream.
Barista quality coffee with one touch by DeLonghi.
200,000 visas were issued by the Labor government just in February. That's 200.
And those demons didn't leave. So I was hurt. I went home and I was crying. I fell asleep at the Assemblies of God College. I left my friend there, who ended up actually taking him back downtown on his motorcycle. So he did that for the pastor, and I went back to my dorm. So I fell asleep, and the Lord gave me a scripture. This kind comes out by prayer and fasting only, because I wondered, like, why didn't the demons listen to me? I'm a Christian now. I left everything, and I feel like the demons should. And I fell asleep crying, and he said this kind comes out by only prayer and fasting. In other words, it was a different level of a devil. So during my sleep for that next hour, I was taken above the campus. So I was asleep, but I was in a vision. And this is what happens to me. I'm asleep, and it's a vision. And I see the future, and
I saw something about that judge being arrested. She's getting arrested on Trump's behalf, isn't she?
God shows me this is what my intention is. But then he shows me that it might not happen. So he'll show me both sides of it. So I'll see destruction, and then I'll see the outcome that God wants. And then he says, you got to pray, which is a totally new concept.
Just think about that. Trump's going after the crooked judges. Yeah.
Concept to most churches these days is that there's a conditionality to God's will, that we can steal the election. You can actually make it not happen. People can do things and God can do his intention, but it doesn't happen. And that's usually in the Bible. Prophecies that were given about Israel, they never happened. The destruction came. But God said, I have a good and expected end for you, Israel. Plans for you to prosper. That was Jeremiah and Jeremiah 29:11. But Daniel read that and then had all those visions based on the fact that he realized that prophecy was about him being in Babylon, being there in Baghdad, and all his people. So he went to prayer, and then they were brought back to Israel, right? But he also was shown the end times. Okay, so you realize that things can be stolen or changed or slowed down. So in this vision, I saw, which I didn't know anything I told you about my roommate, but he had taken him on his motorcycle to the downtown. When he took him to the downtown and dropped him off, the demons were telling him through the guy the whole way down there, was sitting on the back of the motorcycle, was saying all this stuff. And they were not happy with me. So when I was up there, the Lord showed me him on his motorcycle doing all this, which there's no way for me to know. So that was kind of the confirmation that I tell this story with, is that there was a hooded creature at the foot of my bed after this vision. that was about 9 feet tall. It was a brown, 9 foot tall with brown druid type of hooded creature. I couldn't see his face. He was not happy with me. And he said, I will search for you and I will find you and I will kill you. And at that, I started laughing. And I walked around him and opened the door, and there was my roommate. How did I know that he had just come on his motorcycle and was ready to knock? And I opened the door before he could knock. And he told me everything. All right, so fast forward now. I'm at Southwest Airlines. I'm on final approach into San Diego. I am the head flight attendant. I go to the back to tell the flight attendants to sit down early. It's going to be bumpy on the descent. So when we enter into the descent part of it, go ahead and clean up everything, get everything out of the cabin and sit down. And so when I went back there, I passed a woman that started screaming at me. She grabbed the magazines, made a pile of paper and lit it on fire. And this is what she said: I have found you and now I'm going to kill you. With the same voice that years before, that hooded creature said at the foot of my bed. That woman had slithered out of her seat like a snake in front of everybody. Like she didn't have a backbone. When they took her off, they had to put her in a straitjacket because she wanted to kill me. She tried to light the plane on fire.
Wow.
We had to pour coffee and everything on her to stop her.
What?
When the police came, it took 3 or 4 police officers. They had her in a straitjacket. She turned the full around. Her head turned completely like an owl.
No way.
And she said, I will kill you. I will find you and I will kill you. Now, this has happened several times.
Wow.
And there were police reports with this on it because the police were called. There was another time that this happened. And it took 8 officers to take this guy off. And it was actually into here.
What do you mean it's into here?
What would cause people to act like that? I remember one time a lady was having a heart attack and I put her in the aisle to give her CPR. And a guy took his beer and threw it at me and hit me in the head and said, let her die. I want another beer. That was in Fort Lauderdale. We emergency landed in there. Okay, so they took him off. Then they had to walk me out because we were going to switch planes. And they said, you got to stay away from this guy. He wants to kill you. I go, for doing CPR on a 80-year-old. And when he saw me and when they were escorting me, he said the same thing. I'll find you and I'm going to kill you. Okay, so this is not really these people saying this because, you know, they don't know me. Right?
Hey, Trace, good to see you.
But it's the same verbiage, right? So it's an observation. You see this over the years, this commonality thing. And you think, okay, this is very, right? Wouldn't you think that's interesting? So the final one was from Pittsburgh to Las Vegas. There was a group of 15 people. Some of them were women too, but they came on, and as they came on, they were really vulgar and cocky. So I have to tell the pilots, because if I smell alcohol or anything like that, I have to tell the captain, and he cannot take off. So I have to tell the pilots, because I'm their ears and their eyes. So I have to tell them, listen, I smelled alcohol on this person. And he goes, well, get them off. I can't go now that you
Don't go flying with this guy, he'll dob you in.
told me that. So that's how it works. So if you have alcohol on you or anything, and you display that kind of thing, the flight attendant has to turn you in, because you cannot carry a person who because things happen at altitude. It's quadruples. Whatever you've drank is quadruple in the air.
Okay, that's interesting.
Because of the way the oxygen works in your body. Okay, so these guys didn't have that smell on them, but they were vulgar, and they were extra vulgar to me, you know. And so being the lead flight attendant, I just let him know. He goes, well, just keep an eye on them if there's no alcohol or anything like that. So they went and sat in the back.
I missed the point that he actually worked for him. I thought he was just being a passenger dobbing them in. That's a bit different.
But then the flight attendant, when we were, you know, probably over Indiana, and we still got to go to Vegas, they started acting up a little bit. And so I said, well, just keep, and I called the pilots, and he goes, okay, well, just let me know. And so anyway, when we were going to start our descent, the flight attendant said, they have threatened to rape the women. I go, these people are really stupid to even say that. So the parents were like saying, we need to do something. They said this in front of my child, that they're going to rape me. So, you know, these things get into like, you know, where you have to call for an escort, Air Force escort, and you have to claim an emergency, and you have to start a descent. And so essentially, we had to move people on these flights and get them ready for landing. And then it took 8 police officers to take those 15 people off. Some of them they were carrying within a chokehold. So what would cause people to act like that? And when I went back there to address them, they said they would say things that didn't sound like it was a person talking to me. It was like, leave us alone. Go back to your front of your aircraft. This is our aircraft now. Well, when you say that, you ain't going to even ride a bicycle in the United States again. Those people will never fly again. They won't even get on a bus. So they were all hauled off. Well, what would cause people to do that? So I called Kathy and I said, it's time for me to retire. So I have many more of these kind of stories. I do. But I think that you can see that observation and things, behavior, the way people act, and especially if you believe in prayer and you're walking in the Spirit, you're walking with God, and you see people change. You watch behavioral changes happen. Groups of people, individuals. Right. You watch this over the years. You start to see things that you can earmark. Okay, so I saw that there are things that can be stirred up in all these situations that are really collateral. They're not intentional things you do. It's collateral by you in going into a certain area, space, things like that. People start to change, and then you just wonder, okay, is that really that person? Or is that something else that's influencing them? And then when you find out that drugs and alcohol kind of open people up to be less resistant to something that is controlling them. And they seem to be able to say things that they shouldn't say.
What's it do?
This is our home night.
Who on earth do you think you are?
You can call me Mum.
The Hardacres, now streaming only on BritBox, the ultimate collection of British telly.
With Vodafone's high-speed home internet plans, you come face to face with speed that'll blow you away. Supercharge your home from just $55 a month for 6 months with a broadband provider.
Oh, come on, Ed.
Vodafone.
Bloody hell.
Min recently turned to MYOB, giving her faster invoicing so she could pay to put a new twist on her studio and stretch her core audience.
It takes just 2 seconds to weld a spot, and within 5 minutes, the railing can be stood.
And why are the demons always bragging? Do you want to hear some more? Okay, so I was working for the hotel in Tulsa, and I would go and pick up people in a limousine for the hotel. At certain times, I was assigned the big long stretch limousine, and I was going to Rhema Bible Training Center. but I would at times be assigned a limo. So all the big bands and groups, back then it was like Boston and, all the Kansas and, all those guys, the Eagles, they would come and we would just put them all in this big stretch limousine and I would take them wherever they wanted to go pick them up at their airplane or whatever. And so I was on the way to do a pickup, and on the way out, I saw this individual walking, and I felt like I was supposed to pick him up and talk to him because I was going to be early anyway. So I stopped and I talked to this guy, and immediately he started doing the same thing. He started having these manifestations. And he started prophesying about destroying America and about Tulsa. And there were like multiple voices, multiple entities. And I'm like a really no nonsense person. But the reason that I'm where I'm at as far as what I'm doing is because I realize that if someone doesn't talk to the church and have a come to Jesus meeting about these things, we're just going to stay with our head in the sand. And these things are not going to be dealt with. They're going to actually take over our government. They're going to take over the churches, which doesn't seem like it can even happen, right? But we can see the ineffectiveness of different works and different governments and systems and stuff. And so you wonder, like, what is really going on? So I just didn't even take the guy. I just kicked him out. And I said that none of the stuff you said is going to happen. But I thought it was really interesting that all the demons that a lot of the demons that I would encounter would have this prophecy about destroying America and judgments coming and all this. And I thought, it reminded me of what Jesus said that I mentioned last night about, you don't know what spirit you're of. And I thought, well, why would God honor a Mayflower covenant and then a compact and then, destroy America? I mean, if anything, that just abortion alone would be enough, to do that, right? But then you have individuals and you have people from other countries that are here that love America and are here legally and everything, so you can't just say, okay, this country's going to disappear because of this, because if you say that, then like, what about all of us that are here that are praying and walking with God? Are we going to get judged too? And so then you look and you say, well, then how's come I can speak to a tornado and it actually changes direction, right? So, like when a hurricane is coming toward us, where we live on the Gulf of America, I don't send it to Lafayette because I have warrior fellowships there and people I'm not going to send it there. I'm going to poke the eye out of it and I'm going to have it dissipate, right? I'm not going to send it somewhere else because I found like it'll probably listen to you. But then it's like you're praying for the Chiefs and someone else is praying for their team and they're both Christians, Well, what does God do? Who wins? See how silly we are? So when we think about entities, we got to think that entities want to deceive people into siding with them about something that is not the right narrative, right? Okay. So I don't want to disappoint you in what I'm about to tell you. I want you to be well informed that there is a great deception going on, and it is at the highest level, and that the people that are in the know, the head of Space Force, the head of ATIP, which is the Aerial Phenomenon Research Project, that literally reverse engineers these things, has catalog after catalog of all the information of all of these objects. They know, I can show you, I'm going to talk to you about people that have observed these ships, have observed the pilots, have done autopsies on the pilots. Okay, this is not hearsay. These are people I know, and then all these I don't know. The ones that have come forward because at this time they have some sort of protection. So the others spoke when they shouldn't have spoke. But now some of them are speaking. And over these many years, I felt like I should do coffee talks where it's just an hour here and an hour there of talking to you to try to see if you could think outside of the framework of what you've been taught, to realize that maybe the narrative that you've been given even in the church could be wrong. Not that the scriptures are wrong, but that the scriptures are vague about certain things. There isn't a lot of information about the demonic. There isn't a lot of information about the angelic. Okay, but we understand that it's not fair to not know things because we're dealing with this other realm, whether we like it or not. Everyone is a spiritual person in the sense of they all have a spirit. Those who are born again are new creations. They will be led by the Spirit. But those who don't have the Holy Spirit, they don't have a choice. Because their spirit is not born again, they don't have the ability, Paul said, to listen to the Spirit. So they get overrun, overpowered. Okay, my assignment is in the church, Christians shouldn't be overrun. It's not biblical. Christians should have a devil problem. The devil should have a Christian problem, right? So that, just so you know, I do this, and I started this today. You get the full blunt of 45 minutes of like, when is he going to get into the good stuff? Because I'm telling you, I have to explain to you why I am doing this, why I have come to this conclusion, is that the other realm is more real than this realm. And I was there, and I didn't want to come back. This is a downgraded version. Everything is downgraded. And down here, it is a struggle to do anything. You only would know that if you've lived a long time or if you've had an experience where you have been to the other side. I had the privilege to be on the other side. I was not sent back to defend that. I was sent back to talk about what I saw and heard. The Lord told me to tell my people that I love them and that I'm real. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, not to promote or defend my experience. You see, if it's authentic, I don't have to defend myself. And I don't change my story. It's still the same thing. But there's more that I haven't shared because the Lord says we've got to get to a place where everybody has their threshold higher. So we experience things and we get used to that knowledge and that wisdom and operating it, and then you don't feel overwhelmed. But see, what I feel is going to happen is they're going to pull the carpet out from under us and tell us a whole bunch of stuff at one time and then say that these are our gods. Because that's the rhetoric that these reptilian type creatures that were the one that was in the garden, the offspring of him, is saying these things to people. I just listened to an interview this morning. They have an agenda that has to do with the Garden of Eden. Do you notice? Talk about, because I can mention aliens, flying saucers, Sasquatch. I can talk about the Greys. But if I mention reptilians, I get flagged. And it says, this gentleman is referring to a fictitious creature.
Hey, Kelly, I'm
when
going
I
to
say
see you.
alien or flying saucer, when I say reptilian. So if you notice, I always mention reptilian. And the reason why is that I want people to see that there's something to this that has to do with the Bible. Because the seed of the serpent is going to bite the heel of the seed of the woman. And that's the struggle that God proclaimed right there in the garden. Right there. So I look at the narrative of the Bible based on how it all starts and then how it all finishes. the serpent at the end of Book of Revelation is judged, right? The serpent was in the garden, right? Okay, so when you read deeply
The word Vatican means divining serpent.
into the words that are used in these areas of Genesis, Genesis 6, Genesis 2 and 3, Genesis 11, and you really read the Hebrew, it doesn't always say what people are saying. When you look at the words, for instance, we call the devil Lucifer. Did you know that in the Bible it talks about Lucifer, how you've fallen? Do you know that in Hebrew, Lucifer is not even there? And that's when I told Kathy, I go, we got a big problem, Houston. We got a problem.
What?
It says Hallel. And the reason why I started investigating this is that because I thought if he's an anointed cherub, his original name would have the name of God in it. It would not be Lucifer. So then I find out that Lucifer was a Babylonian god. And that somehow was placed in there. So I thought, what else is in there that's not in there? And, vice versa. And I started to realize that it's very dangerous to not really study. Why is there so many translations?
Good question.
When you spend only 0.02% of your time doing things, you can spend 17.5% of your time with your best friend.
He's letting a dog lick his mouth. What a
taking
pig.
your stress out on strangers. 10% on the arts. 38% dwelling on that terrible thing you said to your coworker at the party. And 20% baking for your colleagues at work. Especially Brenda.
Especially Brenda.
Lunchtime cravings kicking in? Relieve them with Nicorette, the #1 stop smoking brand in Australia.
I'm bound to.
The Target Big Brand Toy Sale is now on. Barbie Dance and Flutter Butterfly $29, Lego Speed Champions Ferrari $25, and Hot Wheels Premium Collector Set $19. Sale ends April 27. T's and C's apply. See in-store and online for details.
They are not many. The rebels, the shapers of dreams. They live in the shadows, creating the strongest.
And you have to remember that I sat in classes, in Greek classes, with people that were on my hall that are now the leading Greek scholars and Hebrew scholars in the world. And if I name them, you know who it is. I prayed with them, I ate with them, I studied with them, went to the same classes, but they just kept going on. And I thought, you know what, I don't even know English because I'm from Pittsburgh, I mean, it got to be like, but you got to remember that everybody learned from somebody else.
Diane, there's a lot of people standing up for this new jab, isn't there? What are they going to do when people refuse to take it? Because a lot of people woken up now from what happened with the COVID jab.
And at a certain point, and I would trust this person more than anybody, but because I know him and I know he prayed in tongues. But we don't know a lot of what we think we know. We don't. And the bottom line is that when you realize you don't know anything, but you can find common threads. So I look, and when I talk to people that have observed things and have worked on things, I look for common things that are said. And over all these years, I've come to some conclusions based on this thread that is of commonality that through all these encounters, these abductions, these sightings and things like that, I look for peripheral.
Diane, that'd be because of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., wouldn't it? He's gone right. Oh, the statistics he gave. I seen him say that back in the day it'd be 1 kid in 60 with autism, but now it's like 1 kid in 12, and it's because of the vax. He's connected the dots.
I look to see if there's anything that's common And if any of these people are Christians, and I find that people that are of a strong faith, they either stop these things or they don't happen to them. When you look at the studies that were done by John Mack, they're case studies based on a neutral position, and you look at a thousand people in every spectrum of life, and he came to the conclusion that these people are not lying, and there's common threads, and these things are not good.
Yeah, right.
Now that's not, same with Lou Elizondo. These things are not good. Diana Paulsaka, she just was in an interview with Sean Ryan. She said, this disturbs me. She's like one of the leading religious in the Catholic realm, has access to the Vatican. She also talks on this UFO thing because she's friends with these other people, and they all have formed kind of like a group of very highly educated and Pulitzer Prize winners. And they're like neutral, but they're saying, listen, there's some common things. And so she said, this is deeply disturbing, the narrative and the agenda of these things. She said, it really bothers me and I'm concerned. I'm concerned. And she gives the reasons why. And you need to watch that interview. So everything I'm referring to you, I'm not giving you page numbers and names and quotes because I want you to draw your own conclusions, but I'm giving you a conglomerate of everything that I've gathered. And what I'm finding is that people that are the top of their field in the world, that surprise, they or have already received it, they are saying, listen, these are interdimensional beings. They said, but we cannot really figure out what they're up to. But each one of them says, my gut feeling is that these are not good. I've heard that enough times. Then I hear people say, well, they're our friends and, but it's a smaller group. When you read the encounters, and you got to understand, some of these well-known encounters, I know the people. I have sat and talked with people that were there. Okay. I mean, things that you read in books, I know these people. And what happened to them was real, and it was not God. So over the next couple of years, what I want to do is help people to change the way they look at things and at least be fair and be unbiased about the fact that, yes, Jesus died on the cross and he defeated the devil. But then he gave the keys to the church and then he left. He said, you are not going to be alone. I'm going to send another one like me. He's going to be a friend just like I am. He is going to hear from the Father. He's not going to speak on his own. The Holy Spirit is not going to speak on his own. He is only going to say what the Father's saying, just like me. He's going to lead you into all truth. He's going to show you things to come. He's going to remind you of things that I've said. That is what we have. Okay, that's what he said. So that person came on the day of Pentecost. It is one of the most disputed things on the earth in religion is the baptism of the Holy Spirit.
Hey, Shawnee,
Why?
good to see you.
Because of the promise of what that means to the church. So you can understand that if we are left without that helper, how can we deal with what I'm talking about? Because then science goes ahead of it, and then they can weaponize what they have found. That you can manipulate gravity. You have propulsion systems that operate on different realms and different laws, which they have. I've seen it perform. I have talked to people that have worked on it. Okay, so this is happening. And you're shocked by the JFK files and the auto pen. But that is candy compared to what I'm talking about. Because what happened is we were warned about the military industrial complex. And it was Eisenhower, I believe, warned us about that. Why? Most people didn't know what he was talking about. But I can tell you what happened if you'd like to know. So can we get into it?
Yeah,
Okay,
do it.
all right. This right here is on the top row is the people that you can come up here later and take pictures. Don't do it now because Dennison will get really uptight. These top row here is what you need to look into. Chuck Missler, he worked for the Department of Defense.
Right,
People
man of
dispute
God.
that, but he himself said that. He became a minister. If you read all his stuff, that's how I got mine. It was over 3,000 hours of study. A lot of his stuff is not available, but you can look on YouTube and find it. He is the man. He's a scientist, but he's also a minister, and he has.
It was Chuck Misler's example I followed by praying over the neighbourhood. I'd done the same as he done
a whole bunch of research about Nephilim and everything. And a lot of what I learned was over many, many years of studying his stuff, which I have, but it's not available. He passed away. And of course, he worked for the government. And so he would say, listen, this UFO over this city, that was a government project. This was not. So he would say stuff like that, knowing that, his buddies.
Shawnee, our prayers seem to be answered here.
Said, listen, the Phoenix craft was ours. The big V shape. No, so there's different shapes that are ours now, based on, if you read these guys. So you have Chuck Missler, you have David Grush. He just came forward. He was also in Space Force. He didn't say that, but Lou Elizondo was his boss and said that David Grush was under him at Space Force, which they worked at ATIP, and he was part of looking at all the retrieval files of different objects and the entities that were in them. So he is a wealth of information, but he is completely being threatened, even though he appeared before Congress. So David Grush, you can look at his interviews. If I were you, go to Joe Rogan if you can handle him swearing every other word, but that doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
Things used to bother me, but I thought, you know what? I think that as you mature, like I can eat food that's offered to idols because it doesn't have cooties to me. That's what Paul said. If you're weak in faith, pull that meat from the table. If somebody weak in faith says that offered to idols, remember in Corinthians he said it? Well, it's because he said weak in faith. See, when I see an owl, I don't think that the devil's after me. An owl's just like he's hunting in my yard. He's like, hey, dude, have any snacks? I go, well, there's squirrels that are messing around. You can take them. I don't think that it's a witch or but certain people don't have an owl in your house. I go, well, he doesn't want to be in the house anyway. He wants to be outside. So I don't have any images of an owl or anything. But I don't when I see an owl. It isn't when I see a blackbird. I don't think it has to do with the development, right? The development of your faith. So if you can handle these interviews, if not, Jeremy Corbell is another one. He swears, every other word, but he's really cool. He's a really good guy. Bob Lazar, I have to be careful because I was actually.
We know Bob, I do anyway.
Tied to his roommate. But if you look at Bob Lazar, he blew the whistle back in the 80s, and that's how I knew about him. And I was told a lot of things that still haven't come out that he won't even talk about. Bob Lazar is worked for he was a nuclear physicist, and he worked reverse engineering a craft at Area 51. And a lot of the stuff he said was at the time not even available, and now it's come out. So that's how he's legit, because he even mentioned things about the craft and how the propulsion system works, and the element 115, which wasn't even on the periodical charts at the time, and now it is as 115. And so that's another guy. Annie Jacobson's Pulitzer Prize winner. She, I had connected, kind of not like her. She got a Pulitzer Prize for doing a study on Project Paperclip, which is the Nazi Germany tied to all.
Brought all the scientists over, yep.
This, because all of this came from Nazi Germany. And so when we went in and took over, we went into those laboratories, And all
I'm
these
not
discs
doing
and
this
flying
again
craft
all
were
day,
there.
man.
Missiles were there that we
Come
hadn't
on.
even developed. We took von Braun and 1,499 other scientists that are on document. She documents all this. She got a Pulitzer Prize for it. Project Paperclip is the one you need to read. Okay, she has other books as well. But at a certain point, she protects certain agencies, which is a flag. But she's a really nice person, and I don't know. But it's just one of those things where every one of these people, there's something about them that I don't necessarily can really verify. So you understand that all I'm doing is observing here. I'm doing this to show you that something happened in Nazi Germany. If you look at these men,
Old Spice isn't a good smell. It's a pretty lousy smell, actually.
their names. They became the heads of NASA, CIA. Why did they skip the Nuremberg trials? They're supposed to be in jail. Well, it's because of their asset value that they were taken to New Mexico, to Los Alamos. When you look at Edward Teller, when you look at all of these people that developed the nuclear weapons, all this stuff is under the Department of Energy. That's why you can't find a lot of the files on UFOs, because it really involves nuclear energy in the core of the propulsion system, which creates field and can disrupt field so that you can disrupt the gravity field behind you and ahead of you, to where you can hop it, skip, and do a 45 light years of travel in 45 minutes. And that's why you see these craft, they dart. They are being drawn along from disturbing the air in front of them, but not the air, actually the field. And it's too deep for all of us. I've read it, and it's taken me all these years to start to understand some of it, but it's classified. So you can't find a lot of these things. I've had to look up these guys' names, and on Amazon, they have like 1 or 2 copies.
It's sort of like a swimming race. Like when they race in the Olympics, they do freestyle and they build a little wave up in front of them. And the idea is to try and get on top of that wave and ride it down. There's like freestyle or something. So it's the same sort of principle.
Because they took everything down. But if you look, and don't even try, because I got the last copies of these guys, but they went into the CIA and they just disappeared. But they were like really understood all this about the field, the technology of gravity and magnetic field, and then resonance. There's another thing about resonance and frequency that also you can manipulate. And so these craft operate in multiple fields, not just one. There's several different things happening. That's why you see different colors at different times, and you see the way that they tilt and they move. This is all science. This is not like spooky stuff. But my point in saying all this is that what happened was, where is he? This guy, I would say, if you were going to buy a book, I would buy his book called The Day After Roswell. He was given, he got to see the bodies, but there were multiple crashes. I don't know if you know that, but there were 3 different objects. It wasn't just one. And what was happening was our radar and the fact that we were exploding atomic bombs was affecting the fields that these things operate on, and they were crashing. They were falling out of the sky in the areas where we were detonating these bombs. Okay, so Colonel Corso was given fragments of their suits, of the different wiring that was in there, which was glass. They called it fiber optics. The microwave, all these things were in these relics, and he was given these to distribute among what we call the industrial complex, the military industrial complex. So they were given to Corning and General Electric and Lockheed Martin to reverse engineer. So if you notice that the CIA had the SR-71, which was the A-12, So that is a plane that is still is confounding. And one of my professors was the wing commander. I flew that. But that airplane was way beyond its time in the 60s, the late 60s and early 70s. And though the material it was made out of, Lockheed Martin had some of this material given to them. And so you have this huge conspiracy about fiber optics and Kevlar, because that was what was brought from the uniforms they had on. They were biological entities, and Colonel Corso said, I didn't get to see the craft. I got the pieces to distribute. That was my assignment, and reverse engineer it, and then give it to these corporations, which are still around today because they have a corner on technology, which is not really fair to, when you talk to other people that would want that. So he said that these biological entities, they were made up of part human and part reptilian. And he said, specifically iguana skin. They were genetically altered and made in a lab, which then you start to wonder, okay, what in the world is really going on here? And so just to settle this so I can have a drink of coffee, we can go on, is essentially the demonic needs embodiment. And so Satan used the serpent. When you think about the cherub that covers, it says that the Nakash in Hebrew, which is the wise one or bright and shining one, which then that is Hallel. But then when you look at Nakash, it's not like what you think. It was an upright type of creature. But it was used as a puppet. It was the most cunning of all the creatures in the garden. So it was chosen because it was cunning, that would be able to be manipulated to be used against Adam and Eve. Do you understand that? The whole idea here is that this all started with a puppet master that found a puppet and an auto pen. Okay, you get it? So who was really running the country? So who was really running the serpent? So the serpent was a creature. It wasn't necessarily the cherub that covers in the garden that was in charge. That is the sum of perfection, the most holy of all, the seal of perfection, it says. Hallel. Used a serpent. But then he addresses it as Satan, the rest of the book, the rest of the Bible. It becomes the serpent. But if you look at the words in the original mention of it, it's different than it ends up being. Just like Adama is used, and then at a certain point, something happens to the genetics of the human race, and it becomes Ish. And then all of a sudden, it's common man instead of the sons of God. So Adam...
Bev, you're sitting on a monster. Big, isn't it?
Awaken your super.
200,000 visas were issued by the Labor government just in February. That's 200,000.
Use this tool to weld loose railings. It takes just 2 seconds to weld.
Oops. Oh, bloody hell.
Adam was the son of God, it says, because in Matthew, we look at the whole from Adam, Jesus Christ, the whole way back to Adam. And it says every person that Jesus was the lineage of. And then it gets to Adam and it says the son of God. It says it, you can't, you turn it upside down. read it in a hailstorm, it still says Adam was the son of God. So the idea of the sons of God was the line of Adam, which they kept themselves pure even after the fall. They were not allowed to engage in what happened with Cain. And I'm sorry, it's disappointing and people breathe fire, but you got to go by what the Bible says. And if it doesn't say something, then you have a narrative that's sketchy. But why did it appear after the flood? It had to be on the ark. But there were only 8 people that were perfect in their genetics, it says, in their generations on the ark to the human race. Because it was just like the days of Noah, it shall be before the Son of God comes. Well, what was happening in the days of Noah? Well, only 8 people out of millions survived.
Come on.
Why? Because of hybridization. Okay, so the whole idea here is that you have to look at everything about UFOs and all this stuff as what is the actual origin that God told us? How did this all happen that God had to destroy all the animals and all the people, except for those who had not interbred? And why was this allowed to happen? It was because of the fact that Adam and Eve listened to the serpent instead of God, who came down every day at a certain time. And Eve could have asked him because they had an appointment every day. She was talking to him and he tricked her. And then Adam was pulled into it because essentially Eve was not going to be redeemable now. She had eaten. And I suspect, just like my friend Chuck Missler suspects, and he cries when he says this, he said Adam fell on his sword because he wanted to be with Eve.
Pretty deep.
Because, of course, both of them knew. So what happened there? You got to remember that that's how it happened, through deceit, is we fell. Okay, so the narrative is this. Up till today, it appears to be highly technical and scientific, but is it the same story? Yes, it's the same story, because if you talk to people like I have who have observed these things, have taken things apart, they're still alive. Some of them are not, but some of them are still around. And they say, okay, listen, they won't tell you this, but this is what's really going on. I've heard that so many times that, like, I'm totally convinced. You can tell I am, but I can't see everything. And there's 2 reasons why. I don't want to be taken down to where I can't even travel. I also want you to be able to step into this yourself, where you're not being coerced. I want you to study like I did. And if you're interested or not, if not, you can pray in the Spirit.
I've actually enjoyed this sermon. It's been pretty good.
And do your life and you'll be fine. But the only thing is that I'm after people that can be deceived, at the very elect, if that were possible. I feel like they're worth me doing these coffee talks. And just being Captain Kevin instead of a minister with a collar on and just wear a flight suit. Literally, I think the whole thing about being a captain and getting all my ratings and flying is just for this right here. It has nothing to do with I'm a pilot, I can fly airplanes. You know, I could have done without that. I gave it up, and I legitimately gave it up. But I feel like it's a segue where people will at least listen to me and consider what I'm saying, not as a pastor or a minister, but as someone who, obviously you can see I study. I ask my wife, if you see all the notebooks and all the stuff that I've done since I've been a Christian, all the research, all the people I've talked to, like people that you never get to meet or talk to, and I've gotten to work with them. And they have told me what's really going on. And the problem is that the government does not want to admit that they can't stop these things. There's no weapons against them. That's what each of these people up here would tell you. The thing that is bothering them at the highest level is we don't even understand what's really going on. All right, so it's enough, because you guys, you have stress cracks in your foreheads right now. So I'm gonna slow it down. Yeah, no, you guys, no, you really need to give yourself a year now, just like Go to the beach. Okay, so this guy, the day after Roswell, another guy is Paul Hill. He worked for Jet Propulsion Laboratory for 30 years. He has, if you look, he's one of the most well-known at NASA. I don't believe everything that NASA says. You can imagine if I would say some of the things, everybody be, split down the middle about with the shape of the earth and if we went to the moon and, but in the church, we're still arguing about the Trinity and if we can prosper or not prosper. Is there a baptism of the Holy Spirit? It's like things that like, you got to be kidding. Like we got to get over all this stuff. When I was in heaven, I had no questions about the Trinity. I actually saw what was going on, had no questions. I got back down here and it's a big controversy about the Trinity. There's nothing like it. Prospering. If I told you everything I knew about prospering, I'd be like #1 viewed on YouTube, but it wouldn't be good. So I know certain things, but is it really smart if people aren't ready? So what has happened is we have been entrapped by false theology, false belief. We have been limited in our minds. We are not limited in the spirit at all. I literally woke up this morning with no limitations spiritually. I mean, literally the land is good and it's mine. And I'm going to go in, even if it's just with me and Kathy and a horse, we're going in. The land is good. We're well able. Okay. But the whole idea of being a good leader is how many people can you get to go with you? So you got to take the people in. Moses is a master because he took 4.5 million people in. He's the one that gets the reward. But he had to choose between.
This guy is Kevin Zadai. Zadai spelled Zadai. And it's 2 weeks old. He's got 73,000 views. So he's pretty well known.
God and the people all the time. So you can understand he lost out because he struck the rock when he was told to speak to it, because he was a pastor and he lost it, which most pastors are forced into this situation every day. And after it starts like at day 1, and by 7 years, you're done and you quit every day for the next 30 years. And then by 40 years, you're like, I can't wait for Jesus to come back. And I've had people say, all I want is, I had one guy, he told me, he goes, all I want to do is retire on the beach and have 2 flavors of snow cones, blueberry or strawberry, no other choices. And that's all I want to do. Just tell people you got 2 choices, red or blue. Because he was torched. He says, I don't even want to give people a choice because he was worn out. Okay, so Paul Hill developed the boosters for the space shuttle. He also was given a lot of information to reverse engineer, and they, in the document, in the book, it shows that NASA didn't want him to prove that these things exist. They knew that they existed. They wanted him to say how they worked. So the book is all the science of how these things work. So I read that book, Paul Hill, Unconventional Flying Objects, and I read Colonel Corso's book, The Day After Roswell, and you can pretty much from there be okay. However, if you want to know how this all started and how the United States became compromised, you would read Project Paperclip by Annie Jacobsen. And then if you, somebody, actually this FBI agent contacted me, John D'Souza. He's a Christian brother. He was with the FBI for 25 years. I found out about him, but they had hidden his book on Amazon. And they had essentially forced him just to retire because he was involved in the paranormal at the FBI. So he was, in 25 years, he was on cases that had gone cold. And it was because evidence disappeared and people disappeared before the agent's eyes. cold cases where it had involved the satanic. And so he, after so many years of like things going, you know, in a direction where they couldn't resolve them, there were a lot of cases, a huge amount of cases. So he essentially, I gather from the book, so I had mentioned the book because I found one, and in an hour after I mentioned, it went to #1 on Amazon.
I'm not picking up again. This
And
is
he
the
wrote and he
last
said,
time.
thank you. And now you can see him on
This is
all
the
the
last
TV
time. Do
shows.
not jump off the
Okay,
bed.
what he says is these are interdimensional beings that go in and out and are hard to track. So the FBI knows about it. So he mentions like the Miami incident at the mall and things like that. So that is another book where I'm hoping, because he said that he would want to come and do something with me at Coffee Talk. So that's a 25-year veteran of the FBI. It's called Extra Dimensionals. And that kind of explained to you as well. If you want to go any further, I can tell you the other things I can give you.
Okay, that was very interesting. This guy is pretty wise for a young guy. Skip survey.
Saying that because the event that if you have never watched one of my videos until the end, I would highly encourage you to watch this one, because in the video that we're about to partake, it's absolutely terrifying, and it's going to send chills up and down your arm where your hair sticks up. I promise I'm not just saying that, because the event that just happened with Pope Francis and his death, it is actually much more prophetic than the average Christian realizes. I'm telling you, if you don't wake up and see what is happening right now in front of your eyes, you're probably going to fall into deception. But to be completely honest with you, you need to watch this video, because I'm not showing you just one prophecy, but at least 2 prophecies about Pope Francis's death. And it goes way deeper than just a little prophecy. This is absolutely terrifying. I'm telling you, stick around for this video. Prophecy is important, and I would hate for you not to know what this actually means with his death. So without further ado, get ready to watch this bone-chilling video. All right, guys.
I think the Pope was a sacrifice, personally.
Guys, so here we're starting with the video. Of course, I'm not wasting your time whatsoever. We're going to hop straight into it. But guys, understand I do have to pause it every now and then just for copyright issues. But I'm going to try to play it as much as I can without pausing it, because I don't want to waste your time. And I know your time is valuable, and I respect it. But this is from Sunday Cool. And Sunday Cool, they just posted this. And it was actually 8 months ago that they posted it. So this is before Pope Francis died. Like, you know, people aren't just filming this and then they're posting this after Pope Francis died so they can act like they're, you know, prophecies. And these people aren't prophecies, they're just reacting to it. But this was 8 months ago, guys. 8 months ago. So I want you to watch this, and we're going to break it down. Some of the stuff we may have to break down because it may not be right. Listen to this. Let's check it out.
Speaking of something terrifying. Yeah. You guys want to hear something terrifying?
I want it.
Have you guys ever heard of the prophecy of the popes?
Oh boy.
No, I have not heard of that. Okay. I just came across this. We'll put the documentary link in the description. We'll have to try to remember that.
Geez, fancy only learning now about the prophecy of the 112 popes.
Yeah.
We're
But
pretty advanced, aren't we, guys?
watch this documentary. Crazy. So this book was found in the Vatican archives in the 1500s, and it was authored by what the author said his name was Malachi of Armagh, which he was a saint.
And by the way, if this is boring to you, they have a new feature on YouTube where you can like put it on 2x, 3x. Just fast forward a little bit. But
From
watch
like
this.
the
Whatever you
1100s
do,
or
just don't skip.
something.
This guy who wrote it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he was a saint in Ireland, I think. They said
Yeah,
that he was like
Ireland,
the first Catholic to go to Ireland. But this book has 111 cryptic phrases, and it's all written in Latin. And basically, it predicts predicted every single pope from, what was the first one? The first one being Pope Sixtus the Fifth. No, sorry, Pope. These are really hard to say. Pope Celestine II in 1143,
Okay.
all the way to our current Pope, Pope Francis.
No way.
Yeah.
How did they even know they existed?
Well, it's called the prophecy of the popes.
Yeah, they did
And
it.
so basically, what it is, it's like
The
they would
prophecy.
give some cryptic definition or characteristic of a pope.
Yeah.
And it was all in order. But the scary thing is, after Pope Francis, the last one, it just says, what does it say? Sorry, hold on.
This is
My
crazy.
notes. I typed it so
Keep us in
fast.
suspense, will ya?
It said,
Josh, what did it say?
Hold on.
Josh, I need to know. I'm scared, Josh. Josh.
Ends in a paragraph stating the end of the papacy, which is the end of the popes, the destruction of Rome, and Judgment Day.
Oh God.
Judgment Day.
Yep.
Are you hearing this right now?
Yep.
It literally ends at
This is a 1500 AD that this is written. Over 500 years ago, guys.
after Pope Francis.
Yes.
That's
And I can't get into all the detail because
Pope John Paul was pretty convincing. Was it a labour of the sun, born on a solar eclipse and buried on a solar eclipse? So they're pretty precise, these predictions. They're not wishy-washy.
there's so
Yeah,
much in
yeah.
it that's like freaky of how
My
precise
gosh.
it was.
Yeah.
But then the argument is also because, right?
Right.
So could they have used this book to choose a pope with the characteristics of that?
Yeah.
Right?
Like it influenced their decision making.
And what's wild is that this prophecy of the popes predicted that it was Pope. I have 20 million popes written on it. There's so many. Was it John? Who was before Francis? It was Pope John.
No, Ratzenberger.
Pope John the 23rd. No. Sorry.
No,
Pope.
John
Yeah.
Paul II
Wait.
he's trying to think of.
Jeez, I'm so sorry.
Thanks, Benedict.
Can someone? Benedict the 15th. It said that he would step down and that the final pope would come into power and he would be the last pope. That's what this book
last
basically
pope.
said.
And then it's the end.
Yeah, but what's so weird is that Pope Benedict the 15th stepping down as pope. Because remember when that happened?
Yeah.
What?
16.
16? Okay.
16 chapel.
Pope Benedict the 16th. When he stepped down, that was the first time in Roman Catholic history that a pope stepped down.
Yeah.
And that was it shocked the world. Like, what's going on?
Because they usually die in their papacy or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did he do it for? It
Popes don't typically step down.
was a scandal, wasn't it?
No, they said it was like health reasons. Like he felt like he wasn't capable of leading the Roman Catholic Church. It was super weird. But what was the creepiest thing that I saw was that there's this place right outside the Vatican called St. Paul's Basilica.
Mm-hmm.
And they believe that's where the Apostle Paul is buried.
Oh.
So they built like a church around it. But inside St. Paul's Basilica, or like bordering the whole inner sanctuary, is every single pope, like a picture of every single pope.
Okay, this
starting with Peter, like the Apostle
this
Peter,
is where
going to
it gets really
Pope
weird.
Francis. But what's weird is
Can y'all
that
see
there's
that?
only
Look,
a
look,
certain
look.
amount of markers. To
Let me go full screen so y'all can actually see that. You'll see that to the left right there? That right there? Okay. So that's all the popes that they had put in order right there.
Oh,
And
yeah.
listen to what he has to
So
say.
you can put a picture.
They're filled.
There's one left after Pope Francis.
So they're following this thing.
No, that like it's.
I'm saying they're following the prophet. Like if it's they're following the prophecy, they would only know how many popes they have left. And
Potentially, yeah.
So they're planning. Like they must know something.
Yeah, throughout the papacy, like the whole history of the papacy, a lot of popes discredit it and they're like, this is hogwash, and a lot of popes are like, this is legit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they have always said that once that last slot is filled, it will be the end of the world. That's what. So all these popes.
So we have one more pope.
Potentially.
They're saying there's one more pope.
Or the
Yeah.
Antichrist.
Or the Antichrist.
Or the pope. It's
All the false prophets are
interesting, 'cause
popes.
so the people back then building those temples and stuff had to have been following that, or
This is
they got a
wild.
similar prophecy or an idea or whatever.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I don't know how I feel about that.
What's also very crazy is
Listen.
within the Prophecy of Popes, that book, he did something very cryptic within it, and it was the Pope right in the middle, halfway through. His line says, "Axle in the midst of a sign." So basically, like, this is the middle of the sign, and they interpret sign as being like prophecy or the end of the prophecy.
Yeah.
And what he predicted in some part of the book, he said basically the time it took to go from the first pope that he wrote about to the second pope, or the halfway mark pope, was how much it was. I'm sorry, I'm so brain.
This is crazy
foggy.
right here.
422 years. So from
422
the
years.
first one that he wrote about to the middle one was 422 years. And he's saying from the middle one to the end, another 422 years will be the end of the world.
Mm.
And if you do 422 years from the middle pope, which was 1585, that
Listen.
year is 2027.
Dang!
No way.
Yeah. And
Weird.
it's even weirder. So this guy, not a guy, this
That's
one pope,
crazy.
Pope John the 23rd, claimed to be a prophet. And he said that the end of the world would happen 2,000 years plus the day that Christ, or plus Christ's life. So 2,000
33.
years plus
33.
33, you think, right?
Yeah.
But Pope Benedict the 16th wrote a book about Jesus' birth and claimed that Jesus was not born in the year 0, but actually 6
Oh,
years
but-
prior to that.
So
Yeah, they say it's before.
27.
So 27. So that adds up to
4 BC is the best timeline we know.
2027 as well.
Cash out on your retirement.
So
Interesting.
yeah,
That is
the
crazy.
documentary, I mean, it's insane of like all these connections and stuff. And a lot of these scholars don't think that Malachi of Armagh wrote the book.
Mhm.
They actually
There are now 60,000 reasons to love the Jeep Grand Cherokee. This isn't luxury done by halves. This is a grand statement. Now, from just $60,000 drive away.
The Terror Leaf represents the future of gaming, the best that radio has to offer.
suspect that Notre Dame wrote the book, which is, if you know anything about Notre Dame, he did that basically all these prophecies and stuff.
Okay.
Who was also Roman Catholic, and so it's a weird thing.
Yeah, that's a weird thing just be laying around in your library.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet they got a lot of weird stuff in there.
It makes me wonder what's the oldest stuff they have in there. And also, when did it start? Because you said the 1500s, so it's like they started in a long time.
They found it in the 1500s.
But yeah, so when did the library start?
Oh yeah, I don't know.
Like that's gotta be wild, man. That's so crazy.
Yeah, I did a terrible job explaining it.
No, I followed you completely. That was great.
There's so many popes written down on these notes.
No,
Now, this is also another clip that I want to play you from Block Woods. If you think you've seen it all, you haven't. He goes on with more of this. I want you to check this out. I'm actually going to go back a little bit here and listen to this.
If you go down here to the Pope Malachi's prophecy, then you'll actually see that it is prophesied that after the death of the final Pope, which is supposed to be Pope Francis, there will be the one last Pope who's going to get elected, who supposedly, according to the prophecy, is going to be named as Peter. But the last Pope, before Peter the Roman, comes to lead the church through the trials and tribulations before the destruction of Rome and the final judgment.
So listen, they said his name is going to be Peter. Okay? Remember that significance.
Final statement in the passage states that in the final persecution of the Holy Roman Church, there will reign Peter the Roman, who's supposed to be the next guy after the demise of Pope Francis, who will pasture sheep and will be greatly persecuted after the Seven Hill City, which will be destroyed, and the dreadful judge will judge the people, and that's going to be the end of the world.
Oh,
And after a couple of research, they actually found out that the Seven Hill City that they were talking about in this prophecy is nothing but the city of Rome. So it seems like somehow after the death of Pope Francis, there's going to be this new guy named Petrus the Roman, otherwise also known as Peter the Roman. Now, obviously, a lot of people were very skeptical in order to accept this prophecy. They said that it might even be some sort of a hoax because there is no reliable proofs or whatsoever. And the next candidates who are going to be selected to be the next pope are, number one, guy named Peter Turkson, and then we have Louis Tango, and from Hungary we have Peter Erdo. And
so isn't this wild, guys? That they said his name would be Peter. And the three runner-up to be the successor, like a temporary pope, Peter. 2 out of 3 of them, first name is Peter. Isn't that wild?
It seems like Vatican has already decided that the Peter Erdo is going to be like the temporary pope until like all the situation is pope. He's going to be like the temporary pope that's going to do all the work that a pope should. Now, this right here is what they is shocked about. It seems like there are 3 different guys that are supposed to be the successors, and out of 3, both the guys are named as Peter. And that's what the prophecy also says, that after Pope Francis, there will be a guy named Peter the Roman, and he is going to be the final one who's going to be persecuted heavily, and this is going to be the time when the judgment...
I don't think that's true. I think the Catholics are going to be doing a lot of the persecution themselves.
Day is going to arrive. And the problem...
And I want to play this again. This is where it actually turns into something scriptural that we can see. Listen.
The prophecy also states that this is when the second coming of Christ is going to be happening very soon. And it is also when the Antichrist is going to be rising up into power. Now, actually take a look at what's going on here.
The Pope is just... So he said, this is when the second coming of Christ is going... He said that this is going to start the final judgment, where the end of the world is about to happen. Now, there's one more final prophecy to play for you, and this was not something from 1500 that we're bringing now. This is something that just happened recently, and this is from a prophet. His name is Hank Kunneman. Now, you may not agree with everything that, a man of God or woman of God says, because, one time they did this, or one time they did whatever. You say that they missed it one time. Well, haven't we all missed it at one time? The reality is you can't just throw out the baby with the bathwater, and you've got to understand that, yeah, people can miss it, but that doesn't neglect that they are the prophet God has set in office. So Hank Kunneman, he is a prophet, and he actually prophesied this, and he talked about a world leader, and I want you to listen to this. This is recent.
To the innocent and to the cities and nations, and even to our country. May they be exposed.
May they be exposed.
May the plan of wickedness be stopped.
What did Pope Francis have as a plan? It was wicked if you actually look into it. Yeah, he may have claimed to know and had good works and know the Bible and all this. He was very wicked.
He's a Jesuit, and you see the Jesuit oath, you'll know just how dangerous he was.
In all reality, if you hate that, you may hate my channel, because I expose wickedness and what Pope Francis did in the eyes of God.
Yep.
It was not all right. Keep listening.
As Yahweh, you prevail over this time. You cut down the agenda of the inhabitants of evil.
Yes. Cut down the agenda.
Establish your righteousness, God, and bring forth your justice. The people have suffered much at the hand of oppressors, my Father. Now it is time, as I stand. I stand with my advocate, Yeshua.
You can feel the anointing on this.
The legal rights to the blood.
Wow.
And I pray that you would bring mercy.
He prays very similar to Kim Clements, doesn't he?
To those who've been oppressed.
No.
Unjustly. And as you reset the earth, I remind you, do not just bring a reset, God. Bring a recompense. Bring spoil to the people. because of what they've had to endure.
Wow. Keep watching.
And in no way clear the guilty.
Listen. It would be good for you to just stop and be reverent to the Lord for a moment. To listen to what He has to say.
Thank you.
As I come, says the Spirit of God, to reset the earth. Look closely. For the God who sets up kings and takes them down.
Wow.
Is in the process of doing this.
This is before the Pope died.
Do not be alarmed, for there will be strange.
I've never heard of this guy died, but he prayed, like I said, he prays very similar to Kim Clements. You got the same sort of style.
Strange things that will arise among leaders of nations.
Wow.
In territories, boundaries, maps. Leaders of nations. For there will be one.
Leaders of nations. Listen.
Who will disappear. And men shall scratch their heads and say, where have they gone?
Wow. There's been so much uproar.
Man.
Where has Pope Francis gone, heaven or hell? Listen to this.
While another, before the eyes of mankind shall fall down and shall give up the ghost before the eyes of the earth.
Wow.
And others will be, so it would be pushed out. Others will step down. There'll come those who will rise by great multitudes and masses that will demand change, demand freedom. And nations will see like
picking you up,
they are
Ollie.
upside
I'm
down.
sick of
I
it.
speak
That's
of you,
it.
even Australia. But you are right side up. For I will write your...
Hang on, what did he say about Australia? Sorry, guys, I was picking the dog up.
There'll come those who will rise by great multitudes and masses that will demand change, demand freedom. And nations will seem like they are upside down. I speak of you, even Australia. But you are right side up. For I will write your government, Australia. And I'm going to shake you violently, Canada.
Come on.
New leadership shall arise.
New leadership.
Boundaries will be expanded. And borders and maps will not look like they previously looked, for they will be expanded and changed. And I speak even of Israel. For a strange thing shall arise among the Arab nations.
Yes.
And they shall come and they shall shake hands with you, Netanyahu. Because of the compassion, not of man's heart, but of God himself, who stands in the midst of the earth. And my compassion shall be seen in the earth, and it will be seen over the Middle East. As new boundaries are set, expansion comes. The land that I promised to Abraham and to his descendants shall be clearly known. Do not fear, for men will say, this is the time of peace, and then sudden destruction.
Wow.
Not yet. This, the shaking of hands, the agreement and expansion and new territory. A new name shall arise in nations that already exist. It is to show the earth my reset.
A new name shall arise in nations that already exist. A new name. He said one shall disappear, and then a new name.
Because in the days of Ronald Reagan, communism fell.
Yes, yes.
Watch what happens. It is my 12-year kingdom plan, where the walls of Islam, the walls in the Middle East, the walls over Asia shall suddenly crumble. And there will be a sound that will rise up in the earth. Yeshua! Yeshua!
Yes. Yeshua.
And it will come from these places where the walls have crumbled.
Wow. Wow. I mean, you can tell that that's anointed. You can tell that he's obviously a man of God, and he speaks with great power and authority. But during this time of maybe uncertainty, where we don't know when Jesus is going to truly return, because the Bible tells us for a fact that no man knows the day or the hour. But the Bible does not tell us that we will not know the season. You see, we can know the times that we are living in and see that we are close to the return.
And we can know the season. We know we're in the season of tribulation. We're about to hit it.
Of the Lord. Just like a pregnant lady, she may have an estimated due date, but she doesn't know exactly when her water is going to break and when that baby's going to come.
Amen.
But she knows around the time of 9 months. We are in that season. We are in that time, guys, where God, he is about to send Jesus, and he is going to rescue the people who call themselves Christians, the people who are living holy and blameless before the Lord. And you need to find yourself people like the 5 virgins in the Bible that had oil, and not like the other 5 who let it go to waste. And then the moment the Bible says that the Bible says that the master came back, and the groomsmen came back, but the 5 bridesmaids, they were not ready. But the 5 that had the oil, they were ready. You need to make sure that you are ready to meet the master, ready to meet Jesus Christ, ready to meet our Father, the creator of heaven and earth, because that day is coming soon, my friends, very, very soon. And I hope you found information in this video, revelation from this video, and I hope the Lord spoke.
Talia, I had a different dream last night. I can't remember it, but I remember waking up from it and thinking, gee, this is a weird dream.
To you. I believe for many of you, he did. In these times, we need to make sure that we are going after God with all of our hearts. Listen, before you leave, I want to give you this opportunity, like I always do, to partner with this young man. Me, I'm 21 years old, but God has set me on fire, and he has given me a vision and a
wow, he's pretty good for 21.
Mission to go into all 50 states and preach the gospel. I actually just recently prophesied over the word of the Lord from a man named Timothy Eusta, mighty man of God. He told me, he laid hands on me. He said, the Lord says that he has a generation for you to reach. And the Lord tells me to tell you not to worry about the finances, not to worry where the money's going to come in. But he actually said, but make sure that you just go after this generation, and God says all the needs will be supplied. Listen, that's...
Talia, I don't remember anything. I think I do, but I'm not sure. I do remember waking up and thinking I should remember this dream. I don't dream often, but when I do, it usually means something.
What I'm doing, I'm going after this young generation. God has given me a burden for America to be saved, for the United States to be saved. That's why.
And guys, for a kid of 21 years old, he's very articulate. This guy impresses me.
Ordered this Bible and imprinted it right on the front cover. Every state shall be saved. I'm going to go to all 50 states. I just went to Michigan. I'm actually going to Washington, D.C. this next weekend. Actually, I'm leaving in 2 days to go to Washington, D.C. to preach. And the Bible tells us very clearly, how can people know to call upon the name of Jesus unless they hear? And how can they hear unless somebody preaches? And how can they preach unless somebody is sent to preach the gospel? Would you send me today with your finances? Because understand me in this, that it takes finances and funds to preach the gospel. Somebody commented on my video because I gave them an opportunity to give. And they said, when you truly are immature or whatever they said you don't need any money to go preach the gospel. They said you need to listen and understand, young man, that you just need Yeshua to go preach the gospel. You don't need any money. And I commented underneath that and I said, tell me this, sir, when I travel from Louisiana to Washington, D.C., can I put Yeshua in my gas tank? Can I book a flight? And when they say credit card number, can I put Yeshua and
wow, good comeback.
Spell that out? Yeah, I'm not trying to seem like I'm sacrilegious here, but I want you to understand that it does take practical finances to do what God has called you to do. And here's the thing, I want to challenge you today to partner with the gospel, because many times, like I've told you many times before, the average person who makes $60,000, they waste $15,000 of it away on random things that are not needed in their life. $15,000 a year. Let me ask you this. How much of your money have you given towards the gospel? How much of your money have you given towards the saving of souls? Because when I go to these meetings, I go with one
I got to admit, it's cost me no money.
Purpose, to save the lost for Christ. And when you partner with the soul winning ministry, watch how God gets inside of your business.
Amen.
Watch how God gets inside of your family. Watch how God blesses you. Watch how God pours out on you a time of favor where you can go and do what God has called you to do. Because when you partner with somebody else who's winning souls, God sees that, and according to his word, he's going to bless you because of it. I want to challenge you to not just waste your money, but to practically, strategically give on a monthly basis with this young man who has a fire from God and who's going to win the lost at any cost. You can do.
Tally, you know what I do dream a lot of? Not a lot, but probably by now 5 or 6 times. Usually tsunamis, and usually I'm on higher ground and I see them come in. And also, this is more scarier, mass lawlessness. I've dreamt a few times that the world was in mass lawlessness.
Do so by going down into the link in the description. Going down into the link in the description. I thank you all for your radical generosity, because together we're going to win all 50 states for Jesus. Okay,
mate, we're rooting for you.
The Snooze Autumn Sale is on now. Save up to 50% off selected mattresses. Plus, take an extra 10% off selected mattresses on already reduced prices. Hurry, sale ends Sunday.
What a little snooze can do.
There's a word that shaped our way of life.
Advance. And coal, metals and minerals like those mined by Glencore helps make it possible.
Zinc helps make sunscreen possible, so we can enjoy fun in the sun.
Friends, this is Tony. Hope you're all doing well. I found something rather curious to discuss in this video. It has to do with China. It has something to do with something maybe we don't know about. And I found these rather curious comments on one of my videos where someone was talking about how in China, all of a sudden there's less people there. In cities, entire cities becoming empty. We're not talking little cities. How about Shanghai? Is that a big enough city? I mean, I used to buy product from Shanghai a long time ago. It's a very huge city, and it's seemingly much, much emptier than it was just a few years ago. We're talking like some of these movies you've seen where there's like no people around anywhere in the entire city. I'm going to show you some clips like that in a second here and show you that it was so full just a few years ago that you actually had to, like, just the entire thing looked like New York City, like in the middle of the city where you have like tons of people at like the crosswalk and stuff. So I'm going to show you some of these clips. And what's interesting about it is it plays into this whole tariff thing. Could it be that there's something more going on than just simply tariffs? Could it be that they don't even have enough people anymore to do the work? And that's why we're bringing the jobs back to America.
No, China's setting up their 15-minute cities. That's what's going on.
Could that be a part of it? It's weird, but I listened to Treasury Best Sense, and it sounds like he's kind of hinting at something, which I didn't hear the first time. Before I didn't know about this whole strange thing with their population. But check this out. Let me show you a clip here of just one. This is one of many examples I'll show you.
You all say you want to come to Shanghai to start your career.
Yeah, I like Tony now too, Talia. I usually finish off with him, so I'll be over after this one, guys. But yeah, he's enjoyable, isn't he?
Let me show you what Shanghai looks like now. Look at this massive shopping mall. Such a huge space, and there's no one here. There are so many stores open, but no customers. What's going on? This huge mall, and I'm the only one here. There's a street full of food stalls. Looks like a big setup, but not a single person in sight.
I mean, look at that. Empty. The entire mall in Shanghai. Shanghai. This is a main hub.
They're setting up little mini jails, Tony. That's what they're doing.
For purchasing product to bring to America. I used to buy shipping containers, not entire shipping containers, but I would buy product to import to America from China from about 2003 to 2016, 17. I used to do that. And it's so bizarre because I used to buy from Shanghai and now it's completely empty. And I can give you an example of, let me just show you an example of what it used to be like. Let me see if I can find the right clip. I think, is this the one? Yeah, here it is. Let me play this. This will give you an idea how much it changed in such a little time. And I'm going to get into actually a ton of stuff in this video. Could their population be much, much, lower than what they're saying? And we got some strange things coming out regarding these tariffs and also this whole thing with empty shelves. I'll get into all that. Let me show you this.
This is Huimin Road in Shanghai. It used to be very lively here, but now the buildings are deserted and the streets are empty. A netizen said, when I went to Shanghai 10 years ago, there were a lot of people and you had to queue up to cross.
Look at that. Look at that. This is about the time I quit selling and buying from that city. Look at the difference. It's like crazy. And of course, that's one of their main hubs for importing products. Okay? It's one of their main hubs for importing products. And so could there be something going on with their manufacturing where they're not telling us, everything? And perhaps our president knows about this. I'm just speculating. I don't know. But I noticed when I watched this clip, all right, here it is. Let me play this.
Trade practices, essentially saying that the country is in economic troubles. Listen to more of what he said.
China's current economic model is built on exporting its way out of its economic troubles. It's an unsustainable model that is not only harming China, but the entire world.
Okay, so when I first saw this clip, I saw that like a day ago. And I just it kind of went over my head. I was like, okay, I don't know what he means by all that. Okay, so he's saying they have economic troubles. Well, we know they are having some economic issues currently. So I'm thinking that's what he's referring to when I first watched it. But now I'm looking at him like, wait a second. Maybe he's saying more than we really think he's saying. Maybe he's saying that they really are in some serious economic troubles. Like they don't have workers because they don't have a population anymore. You saw Shanghai. Shanghai is one of their main hubs for exporting product.
Shanghai is their capital city, isn't it?
To America. Why is it empty? Like, what's going on there? That's a little weird. I used to literally import from that city. What's going on? This is strange. Why is Apple moving all their stuff to India? Why are they already giving up? Why are they so quickly giving up? Moving 500 billion to America, moving the rest to India. Apple to shift all U.S. iPhone assembly to India next year. China's out. Like, why did they make the decision so quickly? Right? Like, I understand there's these tariffs, okay? But like, it hasn't been that long. Okay. It's not like
Good night, Phil.
it's been months and months, right? It's been like a couple weeks, and they're still negotiating. So it seemed a little strange to me how quickly they're moving everything.
Hmm.
And then, like I said, we got these weird videos showing these cities.
Guys, I live on just outside the coast of Sydney, like about 70 miles from Sydney. And oh man,
empty there.
Yeah, I lost my train of thought. It was in the paper not long ago. They sold this caravan park off, and they're gonna build big high rises there. And the way they're setting it up, it sounds like a 15-minute city, and they're doing that within like 5 kilometers of where I live.
Could it be their population's not as big as, of course, they claim? And so what's really bizarre about it is, of course, every time our president comes out and says they're negotiating with China, China comes back and says, no, you're not. Like, what? What's going on with that? Let me show you this. So is it maybe they have a propensity to, of course, lie when they don't want you to know something? And why is it, and we're going to get into the one-child policy, how is it that their population grew so much over that time, but now it's not growing at all? That don't make any sense. Let me just play this real quick. You'll see what I'm getting at.
One of the problems China has with its one-child policy, they saved all the boys, but a lot of the girls were sort of aborted, if you know what I mean, because it's the boys that look after the elderly when they're old. So China's got a problem now where there's like 10 men to 1 Chinese woman. So that's probably why their birth rate's slowing down, because they've got a big problem with that.
Yeah, but well, they had a meeting this morning, so I can't tell you. It doesn't matter who they is. We may reveal it later, but they had meetings this morning, and we've been meeting with China. And so I think you have, Jeff, as usual, I think you have your reporting on.
Okay, so China's saying there's no trade talks. Our president over the last 2 days has been saying that they're in trade talks. Well, to me, it's pretty obvious that they would be in trade talks, because
it has to be in trade talks.
Even if they're playing hardball and trying to hold out, or whatever you want to call
I
it,
agree.
they're still not going to admit it, even if they are in trade talks, because I think it shows them in a better light as a country. But in reality, they need us because we buy a lot of their stuff. So clearly they're going to be in trade talks, because 50% is still extremely high for a tariff. And I saw manufacturers complaining for 35% tariffs in China. So they're talking. Now, my point is, though, they're willing to, of course, lie, which maybe they're not telling, of course, everything else correctly either. For instance, they tell us their population.
I think Diane posted yesterday that the trade between China and America, it's like $500 billion. China imports like $500 billion worth of equipment into the US. Now, with these tariff bans, they don't come. These guys are out $500 billion. There's going to be a lot of shortages on things.
Is 1.411 billion. They had a one-child policy for 40 years, from 1975, which was about 900 million at that time, till 2015. So they grew allegedly 500 million during that time, while only having a one-child policy. If you actually, if it was really that, let's say there was literally only one.
Okay, that's a good point, Tony.
Child, of course, per family, you're going to have a lot less people, not 900 million. You would have like 800 or 700 million already. You wouldn't be going up, you would be going down. Okay. Now, of course, this didn't apply to the entire country, so that you could explain it away and say, well, actually only applied to like maybe 50% of the country, and the other part of the country was having like 4 kids each, right? But honestly, I kind of have a hard time with that, because you need 2. You need at least 2 to maintain your population flat. So you have to have 3, at least 3 per family to be growing like this. To be growing like this, you have to have 3 per family, while you have this policy of 1 child per family. So that would mean that one, like 50, let's say 50% were having one, and then the other 50% were having 5 or 6 kids, then that might explain this. But do you really believe the other 50% of the families were having 5 or 6 kids? Does that really make sense to you? So this doesn't really make sense. And there's people saying this. There's this Chinese lady. Let me show you this. Her name is, where is it? Her name is Lee. Her channel is called Lee's Real Talk. Check out what she has to say.
In several programs before. I think China's actual population is under 900 million. Is it 800, 700? That I don't know, but I know for sure that it's under 900 million. And the decline is due to 2 main factors. The first is the demographic and social issues caused by decades of the one-child policy, including gender disparity, wealth disparity, and urban-rural.
If your health insurer's list of extraneous extras makes you feel a little discombobulated, recombobulate with AHM's choosable extras. Start with the base bundle, then add the bundles you need. It's extra black and white. With AHM, you're good.
If you seek different, this is the holiday for you.
Hybrid, engineered timber.
Oh, bloody
no
ads,
laminate.
come on.
Beaumont, you've hit the jackpot.
I'm not even monetized.
It's been a long time, isn't it? Your mission, should you choose to accept. Everything.
Oh, it's a Mission Impossible. I hate their movies.
Rural disparity.
So let's just think about that. Like, so they were only told, like, at least 50% of the country, generally speaking, sometimes it was more than that, were told you only can have one child. Often they would want a son only because you only can have one. So they want a son. This is how a lot of people in China would think. If you have all sons, there's no women. If there's no women, you aren't having any new families. You see what I'm getting at? So you got that factor. You also, she said the second factor, which I didn't play, she talks about the whole thing in 2020, the whole, apparently a lot of people were dead from that, is what she says. So she thinks it's actually like 700-800 million, not 1.4 billion. And I don't know what's true. I don't know what's not true with regards to this, but if I had to guess, I'm guessing it's lower than 1.4. I'm guessing it's probably like a billion. That's my guess. I don't know though. I have no clue. But she then goes on to say in another video that they keep, like how we had this recent thing in America where they discovered a bunch of extra Social Security numbers, like 20 million or something like that. And there's people that are like 150, 200, 300 years old with a Social Security number. You remember that? They also have that problem in China, apparently, according to her.
But the author claimed that even the 834 million is still inflated because of a number of issues. One, there was a large number of so-called ghost IDs, people who have died, but whose household registrations were never canceled, and social benefits are still being collected.
Same thing we had here. They're doing in China. So, and then of course, there's all these other strange things. And like I said, this plays into these tariffs because, like, why are these companies all so willing to agree to this? Why is Apple so willing to agree to this? Maybe because they know that it's over there for manufacturing and they're going to flip over to America and India because there is nobody there to work. There's not enough people there anymore to work. Right? It's kind of weird to think about. Well, this could be the case. It really makes me wonder. You have also a number of other things. Let me show you this. Trade war fallout, cancelizations of Chinese freight ships beginning as bookings plummet, number of canceled sailings of freight vessels out of China, carriers attempt to manage pullback, steep decline in containers being shipped to the U.S. You have also 80 blank or canceled sailings out of China here. They're talking about as much as 800,000 containers less than usual. A huge decline of these TEUs, or 20-foot equivalent units. Again, I used to order through this myself back in the old day.
Tell you, when COVID hit China, there were so many dead, there was accusations that they were throwing their bodies into the furnace, still alive. And there's actually footage of a skinny old man on a stretcher, and they implied his destination was the furnace. So they're very brutal.
I've probably ordered it, probably a full container worth over time. I would order like, pallets worth, but to order an entire container is a lot of product. But
yeah, by 2025, wasn't it, Diane, the Deagle report? It's this year, isn't it? I think we'll be at war by Christmas.
I ordered, I think probably one of those TEUs over time, but you get kind of the idea. So, although I had several orders, I would order pallets worth of guitars or whatever when I was doing that in the old days. I did car audio too. I did a lot of stuff with audio, car audio, regular audio, headphones, stuff like that. I used to sell a lot of different stuff. But you can see that this decrease is happening currently there in China with regards to the exports. You can see here, overall U.S. imports are down 64% currently. Now, again, this is mostly not food. This is like, chairs, whatever you buy in the store, vacuum cleaners, TVs, you know what I mean? It's that kind of stuff. At any rate, I think you get kind of the idea. Of course, also I should mention before we go any further, because we're going to get into some really interesting videos. I'm going to show you some of those crazy videos of empty cities, and there's multiple. We're talking huge cities. I'm going to show you one where they're taking out 15 skyscrapers at once because there's no one living there anymore. First, I'm going to mention food supply, 25-year shelf life. Link is in the description. 3 months worth for $4.97, the lowest price they've had in 5 years. Ever since I started doing this, you will get 3 months worth of food for $4.97. You can't even hardly get 1 month worth of food for $4.97 in the store right now. This, of course, is in case you can't get to a store because they're empty shelves. They're talking about all these empty shelves, right? Might want to have that just in case. Also, this book here, The Lost Ways, How Your Great-Great-Grandfather Lived Without Electricity, How to Build a Cellar, Do Things Around the House, like they did in the good old days, hundreds of pages illustrated. You're going to definitely need that before the electricity goes out. The fact is, you never know what's next. You've seen all this wonderful stuff happening over the last few years. It's only $37. Get the printed version. Link is in the description. Now let's get back to the video. So, of course, you have some interesting things going on. China is having a decrease in population currently. You have, of course, let me just play a little bit of this.
China's population is collapsing. It declined for 3 years straight, falling by 1.39 million last year. If these trends continue, China could go from a population of 1.4 billion now to just 500 million by the end of the century. This would
so let me show you something. So they said 1.4 billion to 500